Frank Gardner there. Well, I'm joined now by Broderick McDonald, who's an Associate Fellow at King's College London's International Centre for the Study of Radicalisation. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm going to come on to HTS in a moment, but just first of all, can I just ask for your reaction to these reports that Assad himself and his family might be in Moscow? Obviously, he has been backed by both Iran and Russia. Would he have had the choice of going to either of those destinations or others? I mean, what does it tell us if he is in Russia?
Thanks, Geeta. And regarding Assad and his whereabouts, it's still very unclear, but Russia makes sense. The options were very limited for him. I mean, Iran could have given him some protection. Russia could have given him protection. But in many ways, it makes more sense for Iran to see him go to Russia rather than Tehran, because Iran inevitably will want to have some influence in this region afterwards. And it is not a good look for Iran to be giving asylum to a deeply, deeply unpopular president who has, bombed, tortured, and murdered his own civilians for the past 14 years. So my initial sense is that Russia makes some sense, but frankly, Assad does not have many options left.
And just tell us what you know about HTS and their leader.
Yeah, we've interviewed a number of HTS fighters over the past 2 years. This is a group that has, started as part of the al-Nusra Front, and even before that, its leader Abu Muhammad al-Jilani was a foreign fighter. He went to Iraq in 2003. He was imprisoned in Kambuka alongside many inmates who would go on to be part of the Islamic State. And indeed, he actually went to Syria at the beginning of the Syrian civil war, dispatched by Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi to set up an IS affiliate in Syria. Since then, he's changed in some ways, but we don't know exactly how much. He broke with IS when the parent organization tried to take over the organization that he had started in Syria, and he affiliated himself with al-Qaeda at that point. And then in 2017, he formed HTS, which is what he's led ever since. And they have, in the last few years, tried to present a more pragmatic, locally focused image. But real questions remain as to whether that will last long term or whether that is just a charm offensive.
And what about his links with other rebel groups? Because obviously the wider worry is that we could see an increase in jihadi groups or return of IS-type groups, which is a threat not only to Syria, but to the region and, beyond.
Yeah, IS is got a presence in Syria, but there's a number of other smaller hardline groups within Idlib and the northwest as well that have traditionally fought alongside HTS. Now, HTS has actually cracked down on IS and AQ cells within its territory in Idlib, and that's not out of altruism. It's because they view it as being in their interests. But there are other groups like the TIP that they've fought alongside each other for years, and it is difficult to see exactly how HTS moves forward with that partnership in the future. HTS remains a designated group by the United Nations, the European Union, the US, and others. And that designation is very, very difficult to get rid of. I don't see how Jilani can change enough to really convince the international community, or Syrians for that matter, that the group has fundamentally changed.
And when you say it's hard to know how far he's moved away from those origins, or whether it is just a facade for where we are now, how will that be measured? I mean, how much insight are people really going to have?
I think, first of all, actions matter more than words. So while HTS has put out statements in the last few days and the last few years, there has been some movement in this more pragmatic local direction, not just during this offensive, but even before. But will it be enough to actually convince the international community and Syrians that the group is a responsible or somewhat safe actor? It's very, very difficult to say. I think at this point, what we know is HTS will work with other groups, and it is the largest and the strongest rebel group that participated in this offensive. It has a role that it will play in the future of Syria. but many Syrians are skeptical and are worried given that the group has a history of human rights abuses.
And what is known about who is backing that group and other groups, and whether they're likely at all to look at any democratic future, or are we going to see another autocratic regime?
A very good question. We don't know exactly what the future looks like yet, but there are many Syrians who are not affiliated with HTS who are trying to build a better, more inclusive, safer future for Syria that protects minorities and protects civilians. And this offensive, while it was led by HTS, it also included other groups, including the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army, the SNA factions, which, while they're not as cohesive or as organized as HTS, they also have a role to play in this. There were also smaller local groups in the south of Syria that had been dormant for several years, but were essentially, activated or mobilized as the HTS-led offensive swept down from Aleppo and into Hama and Homs. And so all of these different groups will play some role in the future of Syria, but also it needs to include every different segment and region and community in Syria. We've seen now that a Syrian government that doesn't take into account the incredible diversity of Syria is not going to last long term. So whatever happens in the coming days, whatever government is set up, whatever structures are set up, it needs to include Syrians from all different levels, all different regions, all different communities.
OK, Broderick McDonald from King's College London's International Centre for the Study of Radicalisation. Many thanks indeed for being with us.
Thank you.